3 eerie knocks echoed from my closet. What I discovered will haunt me forever. Jami sat cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by a fortress of neatly stacked textbooks and college brochures. The rain pounded against her window like an urgent warning, while the faint rumble of thunder sent shivers down her spine. It was college application season, and the pressure weighed on her like a blanket of bricks. In the dim glow of her desk lamp, she could feel the looming expectations of her family's legacy pressing heavily on her shoulders. Suddenly, a chilling sound sliced through the air. 3 sharp knocks echoed from her closet. The sound was so deliberate, so unnatural, it felt like a summons from something deep within her past. Jami's heart raced as she remembered the tales spun by her late grandfather's stories of war, loss, and the eerie specters that trailed behind them. The darkened corners of her room began to swirl with anxious thoughts, shadows creeping just out of sight in the flickering candlelight. That stormy evening, with thunder crackling angrily above, Jami felt the allure of fear mixed with an irresistible curiosity. What could possibly be hiding in her closet? Drawing in a shaky breath, she pushed herself off the bed and approached the door, creeping toward the source of that enigmatic noise. As she reached for the doorknob, her chest tightened, and memories of her grandfather's voice flooded her mind. Sometimes, you have to face what lurks in the shadows. Swallowing hard, she opened the closet door. A swirling inky darkness welled up before her, spilling out like a flood of night. Jami hesitated but felt a pull, an insistent tug urging her to step inside. The world began to twist and turn as she closed her eyes, and with a jolt, she found herself in a different realm. Ghostly figures wavered around her, manifestations of her ancestors' brave souls trapped by time. One was an immigrant ancestor caught between 2 cultures, her eyes reflecting the trials of endless journeys. Another, a soldier painfully haunted by the chaos of battle, stood rigid as if still frozen in a moment of despair. Jami's heart ached with a recognition of their struggles. They weren't here to frighten her. They were a reminder of the weight each of them had dragged through life, now resting ominously on her shoulders. Just then, her friends burst through the gathering haze, their fierce loyalty lighting up the darkness. They didn't hesitate, rallying around her even as terror loomed large. They faced the societal pressures demanding Jami conform to the image of a perfect student, and with every challenge they encountered, her grandfather's voice echoed, urging her to resist the burdens of her past. Before they could catch their breath, Jami faced the most terrifying sight of all: her grandfather's spirit, a blend of love and sorrow, demanding she confront the stories buried deep within her family. As he lingered, cloaked in shadows, his apparition began to tremble, revealing a family secret that turned the ground beneath them into a wobbly quagmire. Before Jami could understand the gravity of this revelation, the ground trembled with an ominous force. The darkness was closing in, suffocating, as the call of her ancestors became deafening. Panic surged in her heart. Would she confront the shadows of her family legacy, or would she fall victim to the fears that threatened to ensnare her forever? Each breath felt heavier, each whisper of the past growing more potent. The darkness thickened around Jami, wrapping her like a suffocating blanket. The otherworldly echoes of her ancestors surged. Spectral whispers flared and flickered around her like fireflies, pulling her deeper into an abyss of haunting revelations. "What do you want from me?" she gasped, her voice trembling, barely escaping her lips. The ghostly figures shifted closer. The soldier's eyes bore into her with an intensity that chilled her bones. "You must understand," he pleaded, his voice a sharp claw rasping against her insides. "They live on through you. The burdens must be acknowledged. They will consume you otherwise." Jami felt her knees buckle under the weight of his plea. Was this truly what she was meant to face? The very shadows her grandfather warned her about? She looked around, eyes wide, her friends clinging to her arms, faces pale with fear and determination. "Don't let them take you," whispered Sarah, her voice barely above the din. "You can handle this. We're here with you." The solidarity of her friends offered a spark of hope in an otherwise engulfing dread. But then, her grandfather's spirit surged forward, the weight of his legacy distorting the space around them. "The truth is dark, Jami," he murmured, sorrow etched in every line of his translucent face. You must bravely unearth the secrets kept hidden, secrets that could break or bind you. As the shadows roared with fury, Jami felt a tremor beneath her feet, an ancient fear rising like a sinister tide. Each shout of thunder outside matched the trepidations in her heart, and with each pulsating vibration, she was reminded of the family's history. The pain, the pride, the untold stories that shaped her bloodline. Do you not see? The immigrant ancestor stepped forward, her sorrow replacing the boldness of the soldier. We came to America to find freedom, but your family has been bound by its own fears. Do not let their pain become your own. A vision swept through Jami's mind, images of her ancestors fighting through hardship, standing tall against rising tides. They bore scars painted in the battles fought for the freedom they had sought, but never fully attained. With horror creeping in, she realized she had been running from that very legacy. She felt the coldness around her grow more precise, the eeriness crystallizing into something much larger than herself. Face it, Jami. You hold everything within you, yelled Mark. His grip around her tightened, as if melding strength into her trembling spirit. Tremors rippled through the air, and with every heartbeat, she felt a surge of resilience blossom against her mounting fears. A flicker of something like courage ignited within her. What if she could reclaim the stories that defined her? What if those shadows could be exorcised? In a final act of defiance, Jami stepped forward, and the specters recoiled. I won't let your fears chain me. I will not be the weight of your past, she declared fiercely, her voice ringing out against the darkness. As she yelled, a searing light erupted from her heart, spreading like wildfire, illuminating the memories that once haunted them. Jami could see her ancestors clearer now, their expressions shifting from despair to something resembling pride. But before she could fully grasp her triumph, the ground surged beneath them again, deep rumbles echoing from the abyss. A portal opened wide, threatening to swallow their fragile victory whole. What happens now? She gasped, dread filling her again as darkness loomed once more. The echoing warning of her grandfather enveloped her. You must choose, Jami. Will you embrace the truth of your lineage, or will you let it be lost in the void? As the portal widened, Jami felt the pull like a magnetic force, leaving her with a choice, one that could reshape her destiny forever. And just like that, she reached out to grab the hands of her friends. We faced this together. The forces around them swirled with electricity as they plunged toward the swirling chasm, anticipation building as they hurtled into the unknown. What awaited them on the other side? They fell through the portal, a spiraling whirl of colors and sounds, a dizzying rush that made Jami's heart pound against her ribs. The sensation of weightlessness tugged at her, but it was the fear of the unknown that anchored her, tightening like a vice around her chest. With a sudden jolt, the world snapped back into focus, and Jami stumbled onto hard ground, landing with a thud. The air buzzed with an electric chill, and she looked around, her breath catching. They were no longer in the dark void, but rather standing in an eerily illuminated landscape. A street of crumbling houses, long abandoned, stretched out around them. Where are we? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. She looked as if she'd seen a ghost, eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. I don't know, Jami stammered, fear creeping back in. The oppressive weight of sorrow hung in the air, heavy like a shroud that an overwhelming force seemed to surround them, the shadows from the portal lingering, whispering secrets that brushed against their skin. Just as horror coursed through her veins, Jami caught sight of a crumbling sign propped awkwardly in the dirt. Maple Street, Lost Souls Avenue. What does that mean? Mark swallowed hard, scanning the twisted shadows that flickered at the edges. This place, it feels wrong. A graveyard of memories, Jami murmured as her heart raced. Ancestors, trapped. Here. The realization swept through her like cold water. Suddenly, the silence shattered. A cacophony of voices erupted from one house. The sound of laughter, anger, and heart-wrenching sobs echoed, penetrating the stillness of the deserted street. Jami's heart raced as she felt the magnetic pull drawing her towards the nearest house, the source of the chaos. Wait, we should stick together, Mark urged, but Jami was already moving, compelled by a force beyond her understanding. She reached for the decaying door, her fingers trembling against the rusted handle. The door creaked open, revealing a flickering room filled with shadows. Inside, memories danced like firefly scenes of sorrow, joy, despair, and love. An old woman sat in a faded armchair, knitting, lost in a moment of time, while children danced around, their laughter echoing through the air, haunted yet joyous. "Jami," Sarah hissed, pulling back. "This isn't safe." But Jami couldn't turn away. "These are my people," she whispered, her voice laced with awe. Each vision appeared clearer, the kaleidoscope of family history unfolding like the pages of a forgotten story. Without warning, the old woman looked up, her eyes locking onto Jami's. A wave of recognition washed over her features. "You've come to set us free, what do you mean? Who are you?" Jami's pulse quickened, confusion swirling like fog. "Deep down, you already know," the woman replied slowly as she rose to her feet. "Your family's pain binds us here. Break the chains. Embrace the truth hidden in your heart." The children around her vanished into wisps, whispers fading, but a single shadow drifted forward, the soldier who had previously reached out to Jami. "Your journey is just beginning. You can't shy away from their past anymore. You're the key." As the words hung like spectral chains, the ground quaked again, and gnarled branches burst through the floorboards, reaching toward the sky. Jami felt her throat tighten. "What do I have to do?" "Stand tall," the soldier's voice echoed, powerful yet haunting. "Reclaim your ancestors' strength below, and within only then can we break free." The air crackled with ancient power, the shadows swirling at her feet like angry spirits. Jami could sense the weight of her family's legacy crushing down on her. She took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage she had left. But as she prepared to speak, the shadows writhed, pulling her back within their grip. Panic surged through her as she realized the portal hadn't closed. "What will happen if you fail?" echoed a voice from the darkness, and the shadows thickened, closing in on her, squeezing tighter, threatening to engulf her entirely. With fear prickling her skin, Jami braced herself for what lay ahead. This was not just a battle for her ancestors, but a fight for her own soul. Would she have the strength to confront the darkness or be lost with the stories forever? The ground trembled beneath her feet, and Jami's heart raced as she heard one final whisper. "Choose wisely, Jami. Time is running out." The darkness thickened, wrapping around Jami like a suffocating blanket. Her breath caught, and her heart thundered. The voices around her, once distant echoes of laughter and sorrow, morphed into a haunting chorus of despair. Mark's panicked shouts reached her, but they felt muted, swallowed by the growing storm of shadows. "Jami, come back." Sarah's voice cut through the noise, but the shadows pulled tighter. Momentarily paralyzed, Jami felt the weight of generations bearing down on her, a force that both frightened and compelled her. "Embrace the truth," the old woman's words hung like fog in her mind, swirling with images of her ancestors' visions of strength and pain intertwined. Jami understood now that the shadows were not just malevolent spirits. They were the souls of those who had suffered, their stories intertwined with her existence. "Let me go?" Jami shouted at the shadows, pushing against their icy grip. Just then, the soldier emerged from the swirl. His once serene demeanor was now a storm of intensity. "You are the anchor, Jami. They will not let go until you confront what has been hidden." With a rush of adrenaline, she clenched her fist and felt an odd warmth bloom inside her heart. The weight of her family's history surged through her in a wave. Love lost, moments cherished, battles fought. She took a step forward, defiant. "No more. I will not be a prisoner of this darkness." As if in response, the shadows recoiled slightly, their grip loosening enough for her to breathe. The soldier's eyes lit up, hope ignited within them. "Harness their strength. Let it guide you." Suddenly, the room around them shifted. The walls pulsed, the air shimmered, and in a flash, the memories erupted all at once. Jami stumbled back as she was pulled into a vivid whirlwind of her ancestors' lives, grandparents dancing on their wedding day, her great-aunt soothing a child's nightmare, uncles standing watch against unseen threats. Every joy and sorrow bled into one another, and Jami's very essence swirled with theirs, the thudding of her heart synchronized with an ancient beat, echoing through the electric chill that filled the air. An image crystallized before her, Shimmering through the chaos, her great-grandfather standing tall, his face worn but dignified, proclaiming in a voice that resonated through the storm, "Courage breeds freedom." Her resolve solidified. Jami, fueled by the legacy of her family, yelled back at the shadows, "You will not take me. I am my story. I reclaim it." The ground beneath her trembled violently. With that declaration, the shadows recoiled, bending away from her in rage. Dark tendrils shrieked as they began to dissolve, and the voices transformed from tortured wails to relieved sighs. But just as victory felt within reach, a chilling laugh echoed from deep within the shadows. "You think you can escape? This is only the beginning." A storm of malevolent energy surged toward her, and she felt the ground quake and shatter beneath her. "Jami!" Mark screamed as he lunged forward, trying to reach her, but the shadows twisted back, swirling around him, locking him in place. Panic clawed at her heart. "No!" Jami cried out. The walls around them began to fragment, splintering into the swirling void once more. Jami threw herself toward Mark, grasping his hand tightly. "We need to break the cycle together." As they stood against the looming darkness, Jami felt fleeting warmth on her cheek, a rush of memories flooding back. She closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and channeled the energy of her ancestors that pulsed beneath her skin. Together she whispered, opening her eyes, determination burning fiercely in her gaze. Just as the shadows closed in, she erupted with a blinding light, a brilliant explosion that echoed through the streets of Lost Souls Avenue. But right before the world disintegrated into light, a menacing figure emerged from the shadows, grinning through the chaos. "I will not be forgotten," it hissed. As the light engulfed them, the brilliance washed over the landscape. Jami realized they were not just fighting for their freedom, but for every soul tangled in this web of darkness. In that moment of unity, Jami's heart surged with power, ready to confront the unknown. But as the light faded, she felt something shift behind her, an undercurrent of dread pooling in her stomach. What else lies in wait? She wondered, heart racing. The sound of 3 sharp knocks echoed ominously from the crumbling house behind them. The echoes of those 3 knocks hung heavy in the fading light. Jami froze, her hand still gripping Mark's, their connection grounding her in a moment that felt surreal. The shadows swirled around them, momentarily distracted by their own malevolence. But Jami couldn't shake the chilling sense that something ominous had just surfaced. "Did you hear that?" Mark murmured, his voice low, eyes wide. The earlier bravado had slipped away, replaced by a white-knuckled grip of fear. "Yeah," she whispered, unsure if she wanted to know what awaited her. The darkness had retreated momentarily, but she sensed it was merely regrouping, ready to unleash another assault. Without thinking, she reluctantly pulled Mark towards the old house. Each step echoed in her chest like a drumbeat of dread. Memories flooded back of her childhood, her grandmother warning her of the spirits who dwelled there, the stories that had woven through generations, all warnings she had dismissed as mere tales meant to frighten children. Now, she felt the weight of her ancestors' caution pressing down on her. Their voices warned her to turn back, yet a flicker of fiery determination ignited within her. The front door creaked open with a violent shudder, as though the house itself wanted to expel them. Inside, darkness draped the faded wallpaper like a heavy cloak. The air was stale, whispering secrets that tangled with the fear brewing in her stomach. "Stay close," Jami whispered, and Mark nodded, his face pale but resolute. They moved deeper into the house, their footsteps muffled against the dust-laden wooden floor. Each room they passed felt alive with a pulsing energy, the walls seemingly straining to hold back the shadows that lurked just out of sight. Anxiety danced along her spine as they approached the source of the knocks. She felt drawn to a dim light flickering at the end of the hallway, a doorway partially ajar, with a faint glow seeped through the crack. Just as Jami reached for the door, another series of knocks echoed, this time louder and more insistent. They rattled through the air like a sinister heartbeat, waking something deep and dark within the house. "What if we shouldn't be here?" Mark asked, his voice trembling. Panic flared in his eyes, but Jami felt an odd pull, an undeniable urge to confront whatever lay behind that door. "The truth is in there," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I have to see." Pushing the door open, they stepped into a small, cluttered room. The glow illuminated crumpled notes, old photographs, and artifacts that whispered of a time long past. Among the chaos, a mirror stood against the wall, tarnished but still reflecting shards of light. As Jami approached, her heartbeat echoed loudly in her ears. She peered closer, the reflections shifting as if alive. Her heart raced. The figures trapped in the glass morphed. Was that her great-grandfather? No, it was a face she hadn't seen before, twisted with anger and desperation. It reached out to her, fingers straining against the glass. "Jami, help me," it voiced, distorted yet familiar. Fear slipped like ice through her veins. Just then, Mark gasped, stumbling backward, eyes wide. "Did you see that? It looked just like us." Maybe it's a warning, a sign, but before Jami could finish, the room darkened. The shadows, which had been momentarily subdued, surged back with renewed fury, crashing together like waves, engulfing the flickering light. "Get back!" Mark shouted, but it was too late. The shadows lunged at them, encircling their forms in a chilling embrace. Jami's heart raced as she struggled against the tightening grip. Desperation surged within her with every ounce of strength. She drew on the warmth of her ancestors. "This stops now," she shouted, channeling the spirit of her lineage, ready to fight for her story, for Mark, for all who had been silenced. Suddenly, the mirror exploded in a shower of shards, scattering memories across the floor. With a synchronizing cry, Jami and Mark felt a surge of energy as the chaos enveloped them. Would they be claimed by the darkness? Or could they reclaim the light from the stories written in the shards of time? As the shadows writhed closer, Jami screamed, "Together!" Yet just as the words slipped from her lips, a piercing voice echoed through the clamor, "You cannot escape the past." Another chilling thought invaded her mind. What if she wasn't the only one meant to reclaim their story? And what if the darkness had plans she couldn't even begin to fathom? The room tightened around them, and Jami braced herself for what was to come. The air shifted, thickening with something dark and electric. An icy tendril coiled around Jami's spine, drawing her attention back to the broken mirror glinting ominously on the floor, shards sparkling like malevolent stars. "Jami!" Mark's voice shook her from the trance, drawing her focus back to the chaos that enveloped them. Shadows reached out like long, clawed fingers, desperate to pull them into an abyss. Heart racing, she felt a surge of resolve wash over her, igniting the fire in her heart. "Run!" she yelled, pulling Mark with her. They darted for the door, but the shadows writhed, bending the space around them, warping their escape. The hallway twisted, lengths contracting and extending in a cruel mockery of reality. Each step felt monumental, as if they were wading through thick, frigid water. Somehow, they made it back into the foyer, but the front door had dissolved into the wall, an illusion, an elaborate trap set by whatever malevolence lurked within this cursed place. "What do we do?" Mark's voice cracked, his eyes wild with panic. "We have to find a way out," Jami replied, searching the room, her lungs burning with the urgency of the moment. But the oppressive darkness pressed around them, and stifling dread clawed at her throat. She felt her ancestors' presence wash over her, whispers floating through the air like an unheard prayer. "Look!" Mark shouted, pointing to a narrow staircase in the corner. Jami turned, her heart racing. The stairs were steep, almost daring them to ascend, whispering tales of fear and sorrow. With no other option, they raced for it, each step creaking under the weight of their desperation. Reaching the top, Jami glanced down the hallway that lay before them. It was lined with doors, battered and aged. "We need to choose," she whispered, glancing at Mark, who seemed to hover on the edge of a panic attack. "Which one?" he asked, body trembling like a leaf in a storm. "This one," Jami said, her instincts guiding her as she approached the door at the far end. Her hand shook as she reached for the knob, glancing over her shoulder as the shadows swirled like a storm, growing more furious with each passing moment. With a deep breath, she opened the door. The room inside was filled with the same dim light they had seen before, but it was different this time. Vibrant colors danced on the walls, shifting and alive. There, prominently placed on a faded table, sat another mirror. But unlike the previous one, this one pulsed with an inviting warmth. "What is this?" Mark asked, stepping cautiously into the room. Curiosity flickered in his eyes. battling against the fears still gripping him. I don't know, but something feels right, Jami replied, taking a step closer. The mirror reflected not just their images but beyond, showing scenes from their lives' joy, laughter, moments of triumph. It was as if this mirror was showing them the beauty in their story, a contrast to the darkness surrounding them. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the room, shaking the walls. It's the house, Mark yelled, panic igniting anew. It's angry. As if to confirm their fears, a voice erupted from the mirror, cold and chilling. You think you can unravel the past? You are but pawns in my game. Jami felt her heart plunge. The reflection shifted, showing dark figures pulling at the threads of time, manipulating destinies, sowing chaos. Look, Mark shouted, drawing her attention. It's us, we're in danger. Just then, a jarring crack rang through the air, and the beautiful imagery shattered into ominous scenes, leaving only a void of despair. The voice laughed, echoing through the spaces of their minds. You cannot outrun your past, Jami. You belong to me. Fear coursed through her. Mark, we have to fight. We can't let this take us. They turned, facing the door, now fortified with resolve. Together, Jami cried out once more, feeling heat rise from within. But would it be enough to confront the darkness closing in? As the shadows lunged, Jami held on to Mark, feeling the pulse of ancestral strength flowing through them. The voice roared. With laughter, it's futile. And before they could act, the world around them collapsed into a whirl of shadows and light. As they were pulled apart, Jami felt something tug at her heart, something familiar, something she had yet to uncover, and then she heard it again, those three knocks, echoing all around them. But this time, they resonated with a cadence that promised an answer. What had she missed? What secrets lay just out of reach? The chase for the truth was only beginning. The darkness enveloped Jami. It felt alive, wrapping around her, pulling her into the depths of despair. She blinked, desperate to catch sight of Mark, but he was swallowed by the shadows, his terrified screams fading into an unsettling silence. Panic danced in her chest as she stretched out her hand, grasping for something, anything that would tether her to reality. Mark, she shouted, her voice echoing through the black abyss. It was like shouting into a void, and the only answer was the suffocating silence. She gathered her courage and stepped forward, the ground beneath her shifting like quicksand. Fear gripped her, tightening around her throat. Suddenly, the rhythmic tapping began again, more insistent this time. Three knocks resonated through the air, clearer and sharper. She turned wildly, face pale with dread, and rushed towards the sound. Please, show me, she pleaded, feeling the urgency of the moment coiling tightly around her. Emerging from the murky shadows, she stumbled into a flickering light. It was a long hallway, the walls lined with faded portraits that watched her with empty, accusing gazes. Each step felt heavy, as if the air weighed 1,000 pounds. She turned to the left, drawn toward a door at the end of the hall that was slightly ajar. The knocking had stopped, but the sensation lingered, urging her on. With a hesitant push, she opened the door wider, revealing a dim room. It held remnants of what seemed like a children's nursery, toys scattered on the floor, adding a strange dissonance to the chaos. A haunting lullaby played softly from nowhere, sending chills racing up her spine. Shadows lingered, twisting around the edges of the brightly painted walls. Mark? She whispered, desperation sinking in her chest like lead. Without waiting for an answer, she dashed into the room, her heart pounding against her ribs. From the corner of her eye, something shifted. She turned and caught a glimpse of the reflection in an old, cracked mirror perched on the dresser. It wasn't he, just her face staring back. A figure loomed beside her, blurry and indistinct but unmistakably sinister. Her breath caught. For a split second, two sets of eyes locked, her own bright with fear and the other, devoid of humanity, wild and twisted. Get out! Jami screamed, stumbling back. The figure in the mirror grinned, lips curling back in a grotesque smirk. Something deep inside her told her this was part of the darkness. Yet still, she felt an inexplicable pull toward it. Jami! A voice broke through, sparking hope deep within her. It was Mark, his voice echoing from the hallway. Where are you? Here, she cried, pushing herself toward the door. The figure in the mirror flickered, reaching towards her as if trying to drag her back into its hellish abyss. She lunged for the door, flinging it open to embrace the light that spilled into the room. As she stepped out, Mark bounded toward her, relief washing over his face. But before Jami could speak, the hallway behind her trembled, the walls shuddering with rage. The soft lullaby morphed into a cacophony of wails, echoing everywhere. "What did you see?" Mark asked, eyes wide with urgency. "I don't know, but we need to keep moving," she replied, glancing behind her nervously. The door slammed shut with a deafening finality. The soft glow in the hallway flickered, the shadows crawling closer with each passing second. "Where to now?" Mark asked, taking a step back as if sensing the danger in the air. "Somewhere. Anywhere but here," she answered, steeling herself. "We need to find the source of this nightmare." They turned left and raced toward the next door, pounding against it when they reached it. "What are we going to find?" Mark questioned, a tremble in his voice. "Answers," Jami stated, pushing the door open slowly. As it creaked, a wave of cold air swept through, wrapping around them like a shroud. What lay beyond sent jolts of horror racing down her spine. It was another hallway, but this one also held a different kind of energy, a flicker of hope mixed with dread. Maybe the truth awaited them. Just beyond the threshold, or perhaps something darker was lurking, ready to unleash hell upon them. As Jami took her first step inside, the floor groaned, and she caught a glimpse of shadows writhing in the corners. Were they waiting for something? Or someone? "Jami, wait," Mark started, but the moment she crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind them, sealing them inside. The lights flickered once more, lighting up the walls with whispers of past horrors. Jami's heart raced as an unseen force pulled her forward. This was no ordinary hallway. The true trial awaited them now. But what fire would they have to walk through to uncover the secrets kept hidden? And what would they find on the other side? As the door slammed shut, a heavy chill swept through the hallway, wrapping itself around Jami and Mark like a vice. The light flickered ominously, casting long, dancing shadows that twisted and writhed along the walls, making Jami feel like the very air was alive with malice. "Did you see that?" Mark asked, eyes darting nervously at the corners, where darkness pooled thickly. "Those shadows." "I did," Jami whispered, her throat dry. "We have to keep moving. Stay close." They walked deeper into the hallway, footsteps reverberating with an echo that seemed to mock their every step. The walls, once vibrant, were now mottled with dark stains and faded remnants of images that seemed almost familiar. Peering closer, Jami realized they were photographs-framed portraits of smiling families, but their faces had been scratched away, leaving behind only the hollow outlines. "Why would someone do that?" Mark murmured, visibly shaken. "Maybe they wanted to erase the past. Or hide something," Jami replied, her voice trembling. She reached out to touch one of the frames, feeling a surge of cold wash over her. The moment her fingers brushed against the glass, a sudden chill seeped into her bones, filling her with dread. Then, they heard it again, 3 knocks that echoed from somewhere deeper in the hall. They froze. The sound was sharp and deliberate, drilling into the pulsating silence. "Should we?" Mark started, but Jami took a step forward, drawn inexplicably toward the noise. "Mark, we can't ignore it," she asserted, trying to sound more confident than she felt. But a gnawing apprehension clawed at her gut. What was waiting for them there? As they pressed on, the air thickened, and the rhythmic knocking grew louder, rising and falling like the beating of a heart. Each step felt heavier, as if the shadows were reaching out, desperately trying to pull them back into the abyss. "We need a plan, Jami," Mark urged, his voice low but urgent. "What if something is in there?" The knocking intensified, more frantic now. "I don't know, but we're not going to find answers standing here," Jami insisted, steeling herself as they approached a door at the end of the hallway. Taking a deep breath, she gripped the doorknob. It felt icy against her palm. "On 3, she said, her voice wavering. 1, 2. Without waiting for 3, she twisted the knob and pushed the door open. The room beyond was bathed in an unsettling glow, a pale light emanating from a single, flickering bulb hanging overhead. The walls were lined with rows upon rows of small boxes, each one locked tight. Then, they caught sight of it, a wooden chest sitting alone in the middle of the room, adorned with rusted iron hinges and an intricate, ominous carving on the lid. "What is that?" Mark breathed, stepping back as if the chest would react to his presence. I don't know, but Jami started, feeling an odd connection to it. It was as if the chest was calling to her. It might hold something important. As she stepped closer, the knocking morphed again, now emanating from within the chest. It thundered against the wood like a desperate plea. "Jami, stop!" Mark shouted, fear flashing in his eyes. "You don't know what's in there." Ignoring his warning, Jami reached out, brushing her fingers against the chest's carvings. The moment she made contact, the room shook. The knocking crescendoed, a frantic, chaotic rhythm, as if whatever was trapped inside was trying to escape. Then, she pulled back, the fear washing over her like icy water. "Mark, get back. This isn't just a locked box." But before either of them could move, the chest popped open with a deafening bang. A black cloud billowed out, swirling in erratic patterns. Dark figures flickered into existence just beyond the edges of the light, their whispers rising to a howl. "What have we done?" Mark breathed, panic etched across his face. But Jami was frozen, fear replaced by fascination. From the depths of the cloud, a shadowy form began to take shape, its eyes glowing an eerie red. It was then that Jami understood this was not just about finding answers. They had unleashed something far worse than they could have ever imagined. "Run!" she screamed, adrenaline coursing through her veins as she grabbed Mark's arm. They dashed for the door, but the shadows surged forward, blocking their escape, laughter echoing all around them. What would they face now? And had they awakened a darkness they could never contain? The shadows coiled around them like living nightmares, taunting with flickering shapes that whispered promises of despair. Jami's heart pounded as she pulled Mark away from the dark forms, but the audacious laughter filled the air, a sound that sank into her bones and clawed at her sanity. "Where do we go?" Mark yelled, panic lining his voice as he scanned the room for an exit. The door they had entered through was now engulfed in a thick, inky cloud, the exit swallowed whole by the malevolent darkness. "We can't just stand here," Jami cried, feeling the weight of the hushed figures closing in. The gleaming red eyes of the shadow seemed to pierce through her soul, a chilling reminder of their predicament. A cold, clammy wind rushed through the room, and Jami's eyes darted around, searching for a way out. The dim light flickered once more, revealing a narrow passageway behind the chest, the only other option they had. "Back there," Jami shouted, pointing toward the passage as she shoved Mark forward. They raced toward it, adrenaline fueling their legs, their breath coming in quick, harsh gasps. Just as they reached it, a wail erupted from the cloud, a sound that reverberated with agony and anger. It was a cry that sent a jolt of fear through Jami, freezing her in place. "We have to move. Now," Mark urged, his voice raw with urgency. With one last reluctant glance at the chaotic shadows, Jami lunged into the narrow passage. The walls were slick and damp, the air thicker and heavier than before. They stumbled through the darkness, its grip tightening around them. "Do you think they're following us?" Mark wheezed, glancing over his shoulder, eyes wide with terror. "I don't know," Jami panted, though fear was clawing at her throat, each step feeling like they were sinking in quicksand. The darkness felt alive, breathing, whispering. "Why did we even come here?" Mark blurted out, his voice echoing against the cold walls. "I thought it was just a dare, not the time," Jami hissed, pushing him forward. They turned a corner, and the passage opened into a larger chamber, illuminated by an eerie, violet glow. It was filled with grotesque statues, each more disfigured than the last, contorted faces frozen in expressions of horror. One statue stood at the center, distinctly different. It was a figure draped in shadows, a featureless visage staring straight at them. Heart racing, Jami felt a strange pull toward it, as if it understood her plight. "Jami, we can't stop," Mark urged, tugging her wrist, but she felt a magnetic force urging her closer. "Wait, look at it," she exclaimed, entranced. The shadowy figure, though lacking features, seemed to ripple, as if alive. The whispers grew louder, transforming from indistinct noise to fragmented words. "Help us, free us, join us, stop it. We need to go." Mark's voice broke through her fascination, but Jami remained frozen, staring into the dark depths where she thought she saw movement. Faint images of people trapped, faces resembling those from the shredded photographs in the hallway. "What if they need our help?" Jami breathed, her mind racing. Are you kidding? They're as good as dead, Mark exclaimed, fear spiraling through him. We've unleashed a nightmare, Jami. Suddenly, light flickered violently, and shadows danced across the walls like wild spirits. The statues seemed to shift, their eyes igniting with unwelcome life. Jami felt the weight of the decisions pressing down on her, a sickening realization creeping into her thoughts. What if the passage ahead led to escape? Or would it plunge them deeper into this nightmarish realm? In that moment, Jami understood the stakes. This was no longer just a mistake. It was a struggle for survival against forces they could barely comprehend. She turned to Mark, her voice trembling yet determined. We have to decide. Help them or keep running. What do we do? Mark's gaze darted back to the statues, the whispers now a seductive siren's call. I don't know. We can't stay here. But as they stood at the brink of choice, an ominous rumble rolled through the chamber. The walls began to tremble, sending bits of stone pouring down like rain, and the shadows surged, hungry for movement. Now or never, Jami shouted, making her choice even if the weight of it could crush her. They raced toward the glimmer of light up ahead, the echoes of laughter and desperate cries chasing them down the passage. Would they find freedom? Or were they stepping straight into the dark embrace of despair? As the light flickered brighter with each stride, dread clawed at Jami's heart. Wherever they were headed, it was a path fraught with peril, and only one question lingered in her mind. Would they escape this hell, or would it consume them whole? The path of choices lay open before them, but with each step, Jami feared she could feel the shadows closing in, ready to draw them back into the darkness once more. Jami and Mark rushed through the flickering light, hope and dread greased together in a cacophony of chaos. The passageway twisted before them, shifting as if it were alive, and the air pulsed with a frantic energy. Behind the resonating wails of the shadows, Jami could barely think of anything other than Mark's hand grasping hers tightly, grounding her against the rising tide of despair. As they neared the exit, a blinding flash erupted ahead, illuminating the space and creating a peaked silhouette in the center of the chamber. The shadowy figure, still alive with darkness, loomed large, lurking just beyond the threshold of visible light. Jami's footsteps faltered. Cold fear crept back in, pricking at the back of her mind. The whispers intensified, coaxing her closer, promising safety if only she would surrender. But Jami felt the warmth of her ancestors flood her heart, and with newfound resilience, she declared, "We won't be your pawns. We choose our path." Mark nodded, their bond unbreakable as they barreled through. The shadowy tempest surged forward, tentacles of darkness curling toward them. Jami's heart thundered. This was it. She could feel her family peering through the veil of shadows, their voices like distant echoes urging her to keep moving. But as she surged forward, Mark suddenly gasped. "Watch out." With a swift movement, Jami pivoted. A massive tendril lashed out, aiming toward them with a deadly swipe. Instinctively, she yanked Mark aside, but he stumbled, and the darkness snatched his foot, pulling him back with relentless force. "Jami!" Mark cried, panic flooding his voice. "Hold on." She lunged back, gripping his hand just as the shadows pressed in closer, fighting like a relentless beast. With a surge of energy, Jami pulled with every ounce of strength she could muster. "You can't have him," she bellowed, channeling the love of her ancestors into her words. Mark's eyes widened, reflecting both fear and faith. "Together, Jami. Pull me up." With one last mighty tug, and bolstered by the overwhelming presence of her family surrounding them, Jami dragged him forward. The darkness recoiled as she stepped into the blinding light, leaving tendrils of shadows flailing helplessly behind them. Frantically trying to reclaim what they'd lost, they stumbled into the light. Their surroundings shifted again, an injection of peace washing over them as they landed atop a grassy hill beneath a clear blue sky. A profound stillness remained, woven into the air. Jami glanced at Mark, breathless yet elated. "We did it." Mark gasped, bewilderment mingling with exhilaration. "I can't believe we're really free," Jami whispered, her chest tightening with disbelief. But a low rumble rolled through the landscape, cutting through their moment of victory like shards of glass. A shadow grew in the distance, creeping across the sunny land, a dark reminder of the battle they had just fought. "No, it can't be." Mark stammered, voice shaky. Listen, Jami urged, closing her eyes and letting the gentle breeze wrap around her. She could hear her ancestors' voices like a soft melody, whispers of freedom, stories of struggle strengthened by love. This is ours, she breathed, digging her heels into the earth beneath her. She spread her arms wide, taking in the sunlit sky, the vibrancy of nature blossoming all around them. With a steady gaze, Jami turned toward the approaching shadows. You will not take this from us. The darkness hesitated, a mere thread in the cosmic tapestry that linked them to their past. An invitation shimmered in the light, her ancestors emerging clear in her mind, knitting together the fabric of history and self. They weren't gone, they lived inside her. Face the truth, she called out. We choose to remember our stories without fear. With a mighty roar, Jami felt the shadows falter, splintering against the resolve that now burned brightly within her. They surged away as beams of light pierced through the encroaching dark. Suddenly, the landscape exploded into colors, glowing with life, a world bursting forth from the chains of fear. They had once been held in. Look, Mark laughed, pointing. It's working. The dark forms crumbled, flickering like a broken image, absorbed back into the very essence of the light they had claimed. Jami and Mark stood amid the vivid celebration of existence, freedom echoing in their hearts like a symphony long forgotten. They turned to each other, the weight of fear replaced with gratitude and strength. Jami felt light, as if the burdens of generations had lifted like a heavy fog, allowing her to breathe deeply for the first time. Let us carry their stories, Mark said softly, a spark of the battle reflected in his eyes. So their pain doesn't repeat, and their joy can flourish. As they stood hand in hand, Jami let out a breath, her pulse steadying at last. The past would always be a part of them. They would tell the stories now, weave them into the tapestry of their lives and generations to come. She took a step forward, feeling free, feeling whole. Together, Jami affirmed, glancing to the horizon, where endless possibilities awaited. And with that final word of hope, they faded into the expanse, leaving the weight of shadows behind forever, forging into a future illuminated by the brilliance of love and resilience. This is the moment, my friends. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will set your heart racing and challenge your very soul. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. Every action counts. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel right now.